are striking terms.
Thanks for joining me. Today is December the 3rd, 2018. A few new things have developed. First thing I want to cover, though, is something we discussed last year. We just kind of mentioned it because it had been showing up in a few blogs. And it's only relevant to this discussion because we think it's important to call into question the credibility of the high priests of the cult of heliocentrism, and we find that as we look into it, that they are no better, no worse than any of the other high priests of any other religion. These people have a assumed moral and ethical high ground. They're assumed to be of a higher stature, but then you dig a little bit and you find out a lot of these people are just regular pervs, weirdos, and psychos in love with their own image, and I think they power trip a bit. But in this case, Neil deGrasse Tyson, accused of groping a woman in 2009, inappropriate advances 4 years after a former classmate alleged he drugged and raped her. So this is we're talking about Cosby'd a few people here. Fox National Geo said they're investigating claims that Neil Tyson, 60, made advances towards two women. He's a host of Cosmos Space Odyssey. In 2014, there was Takia Ahmet described this horrible incident in 1984, and I had seen these before, and I thought, well, why hadn't he struck these down if it was just slander or libel? But we also did all detect, if you didn't see it, there was the very disturbing, kind of creepy appearance of Neil deGrasse Tyson at Kate Perry's house. She had said, "The Earth is flat." She read it on a YouTube chat stream, thanks to one of ours. I think it was Trotter, Infinite Shield Trotter, had put down "The Earth is flat" on her chat, and she was reading chats, and she read it. Well, the next day, Neil shows up at her house and corrects her on it. Sitting next to her on the bed, and his hands are just all flying around. And we're like, man, what is with this guy and his creepy, gropey hands? So let's see.
Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson will be investigated by Fox and National Geographic networks after allegations of sexual misconduct. The interfaith media platform Patheos.com published accounts from two women who say Tyson behaved in a sexually inappropriate manner with them. Tyson was host of Cosmos on Fox in 2014, and a new edition of the series was to air on National Geographic next year. Tyson's not commented publicly on it, and Cosmos producers said in a statement the program's credo is to follow the evidence wherever it leads, and they'll be conducting a thorough investigation.
Now, if I had to guess where this is going, based on the coverage I've seen so far, they're giving him a treatment here. Look at his eyes, look at his face. They know how to bring these idols up and make them these shining, unimpeachable, paragons of virtue. And then they can bring them down, make them look dark and creepy. You wouldn't want to sit next to him on a bus or in a subway. Like, out of the reach of those hands. Look at this. The bags under his eyes. Goes through some different descriptions of the things that have occurred and the people making these allegations. Here's one. Dr. Ehlers, a physics professor at Bucknell University, says that he felt her up in an after party following an American Astronomical Society conference. Okay, here we go. She says his behavior was not severe enough to warrant a complaint, but she was shocked to see him capable of such creepy behavior. And this is only relevant to our discussion because Neil deGrasse Tyson has been held up as something of an icon, an idol. They put him on all the TV shows, the late night talk shows, where he can tell the youth about space and about how great space travel is and how dumb people who question the news are. So he's made himself into something of a target, of the flat earth community, you could say, or researchers, because he's put himself out there as like the number one guy. If there's going to be a debate that ends it, it's going to be with him. But now it doesn't look like it'll be the case. We'll see. We'll be following this story as it develops. Now, here's something from one of my favorite channels. This is the Flat Earth Brothers. Just going to play a minute from here, and I'll put a link below.
This is part of the President's Space Policy Directive 1, where he directed me as the NASA administrator to go to the moon and to go with commercial partners, which is what we're going to announce today. We're doing something that's never been done before. When we go to the moon,
we're doing something that's never been done before. When we go to the moon,
so that we as NASA can do more than we've ever been able to do before.
So that we as NASA can do more than we've ever been able to do before.
So the moon is full of secrets that we don't know yet. For example, if you really want to decide what the age is of the solar system, just like you look at the rings of a tree when you cut it, if you want to learn that, you go to the moon and you analyze the samples that are there.
Exactly. They're acting like it's never happened before, and the way that they're selling it to us, I think also, they're trying to reestablish this 1969 vibe that this is the next stage, the next big thing. But of course, the Van Allen radiation belt thing has never been solved. Other problems have never been solved. We're just looking at the inconsistencies in the narrative, and the only reason why we pick it up, of course, is because we're actually looking. You had that guy Don Petit, who said, "Oh, we'd go back to the moon in a nanosecond, but we lost the technology." We lost the technology. And of course, they put Don Petit out there to deliver the message. This scrawny guy with glasses. It's like you wouldn't punch a guy with glasses because you would want to punch somebody if they said, "We lost the technology to get back to the moon." Lost the technology. What actually happened, I think, and what is still happening, is that the media and the video technology, the special effects, the movie effects, these are things that are constantly evolving. And so they can't continue to use and bring you the same low quality as the consumer level quality goes up. As the movies you watch are increasingly becoming better and better at fabricating these alternative realities, then what they're producing in their fake space studios looks worse by comparison. And they can't just upgrade it without causing people to notice. If you see these astronauts dangling like spiders, stiffly holding their arms together, cross-armed, their faces look kind of strained, you see that, and then you compare it to Sandra Bullock in the movie Gravity, flowing around doing barrel rolls and somersaults, something's not quite adding up. And so they are, in all likelihood, going to bring down the space station, or at least empty it out. And that is one of the big stories, is that it's, depending on how this next launch goes, they may actually have to abandon ship. Because if the next cosmonaut rocket goes up and they abort like the last one did, or if they scrub the mission, they won't have enough supplies in the space station to remain up there unless they resort to cannibalism. So they'll be down before Christmas, which would be consistent with the prediction that we made last year, 10 predictions for 2018. This will be the last year of the space station, and the reason why is because they can't keep up with the movie magic of the day. And they kind of jumped the shark by going right into the augmented virtual reality. A lot of mistakes were made, and we caught all of those mistakes. Okay, now here's something from the space station I wanted to show you. This is from last year. In honor of the big game, the crew of the ISS attempts to see just how far you can throw a football in a zero-G environment. Okay, so this would be the longest Hail Mary pass ever thrown. If legit. That's if this is a legitimate pass. And I remember watching this last year when they put this is right after the Super Bowl, and we're thinking, how do they get a football on the space station, for one thing? How'd they get a football? What about all the jerseys? How do they have the jerseys of the two teams that were going to be in the football? Who was delivering this stuff? And we started thinking about the cost involved in sending things up there to space and what they don't take up there that they could take up there. Just about their priorities. So, obviously this is just the space station reaching into the culture. It's them tapping into this big event where everyone's watching, that being the Super Bowl. And so here they are doing their own Hail Mary pass. But what I want you to notice is how far the ball actually goes before they do a crossfade. Here we go. Okay, it starts off on one end. They toss it. Traveling at 8,000 yards per second. Is this a new world record? Okay, there you see the ball going, but watch. Oh, they cut. You can try to follow it. Here we go. See, it's up here on the top. And they transition. So you don't actually have one long continuous sequence here. And so I'm wondering, why couldn't they follow it? I mean, couldn't you put a camera on the tip of the ball and throw it through the entire space station and have it just float through one end to the other? Why do they have to have it chopped up and edited like this? So it's not a record, not legit. Just more fakery. And of course, the people at home watching this thing, they're like, look at that amazing space station. And none of them are asking, who took this picture? Most people don't know that the Earthrise, some of these other pictures that we think are just photos are all composites. Again, this is December the 3rd, 2018. We're talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Does this matter for this conversation? It kind of does. I think we do need to bring down the priesthood of the day, take them off their pedestals, and because that's what they are, it's what they represent. They're placed up there to look up to and to trust them. So you want to trust Neil deGrasse Tyson about black holes, exoplanets? Do you want to get on a spaceship with him? This is from a blog at columbia.edu, what would happen if the Earth were actually flat. I've heard this before, and generally though, when people make this happen, and I think it's a good thought exercise, this is a good thought experiment, but generally when they do this experiment, they just change the Earth from a ball to flat. They don't get rid of all the fake science. They don't get rid of they don't get rid of gravity, or at least the interpretation of what we call gravity, the explanation, the accepted explanation. They still hold on to that. And doing so creates a kind of a strange environment. So here we go. People who believe in flat Earth assume that gravity would pull straight down, but there's no evidence to suggest it would work that way. And of course the idea is that nothing falls straight down. There is no up and down, if you didn't know. According to the heliocentric model and your ball Earth, there is no up and down. Everything is going towards the center of the ball. So what he says here is people assume gravity would pull straight down, but there's no evidence to suggest it would work that way. Well, one, obviously we are not accepting their explanation for what causes the thing they call gravity. But yeah, from our observations on this apparently flat and stationary plane, yeah, whatever it is that is responsible for things falling down, it is going straight down. They're not falling at an angle towards some center of this imagined ball. So what this person is saying though is that gravity would pull towards the center of the disk. And this means it would only pull straight down at one point on the center. And as you got increasingly further from the center, gravity would tug more horizontally, and this would have strange impacts like sucking all the water towards the center of the world, making trees and plants grow diagonally since they develop in the opposite of gravity's pull. So again, this is someone who is doing a thought experiment, but they're hanging on to some basic premise here and there that just kind of holds them to the old model and limits their ability to actually think it through. But it's good so far. Solar problems says, then there's the sun. In the scientifically supported model of the system, the Earth revolves around the sun because of it's more massive. However, the Earth doesn't fall into the sun because it's in orbit. In other words, the sun's gravity isn't working alone. The planet is also traveling in a direction perpendicular to the star's gravitational tug. If it were possible to switch off that gravity, the Earth would shoot away in a straight line and hightail it out of the solar system. Instead, the linear momentum and the sun's gravity combine, resulting in our circular orbit. The way I interpret this anyway, when it comes to the heliocentric model, which is just sun worship, is that as long as you're oriented around this sun, this idol, as long as you're worshiping the sun god, making your circumambulations of that idol, as long as you remain in its orbit, its reach, then you're safe. You're in the Goldilocks zone. But if you stray too far, then you get cast off into outer darkness. So in other words, if you go too far from God, because gravity is God. I also think there's another element to this thing as well, about being perfectly in harmony with the will of God, being gravity. So you take a satellite, for example. You put a satellite into orbit. As long as it remains in its place, as long as it remains fixed, it is acceptable to gravity or God. And it stays in place forever in heaven, which is space. But if it strays a little bit, it goes too far and it flies out into the darkness. Or the other side, if it becomes too earthly, too worldly, it falls to earth and it burns up, crashes. Like basically the idea of angels are that you have the fallen angels, which the Bible describes as the wandering stars. And then you have the stars which are fixed, which symbolize those angels which are obedient to the plan, to God's plan. So as long as you remain fixed in gravity, in orbit, you're good to go. But like the fallen angels who took a liking to women on the earth, they became worldly. What happened? They lost their place in heaven and they remain stuck on earth. They fall down to earth, crashing and burning, and they're stuck here. And that's kind of the story here. To me, I think a lot of what they describe as space is just allegory. And they're just retelling your biblical narratives in a modern space age context. Your ubiquitous, always watching, always present angels that you can't see, but you believe in them because you have faith. They watch you everywhere. They report your deeds to God. So you have to confess your sins, because if you hold back, well, God's going to know. And this has been replaced by the satellites, which if you look, they kind of look like angels, just a box with a couple of wings, which are the solar panels. Again, sun god. They get their warmth from the god, and they're up there orbiting, spying on you, these satellites. And you don't see them, you can't see them. But you believe in them because you've seen pictures and icons, and you've been told that they are there, and that everything you do is being monitored and watched and being reported to Big Brother, central government. So government is God, and what they have done is they have updated their religious paradigm and given it modern sci-fi trappings. Orbiting satellites are a myth. Yeah, there are such a thing as satellites. I'm not saying satellites are fake, but to the extent that they're real, they're just things that are high up. They're not necessarily orbiting, because there is no orb. There are satelloons for sure, and other things. Okay, let's move on a bit. Well, it's misconception after misconception. That's really what it is. Like this guy here says, in a flat world, satellites wouldn't be possible. How would they orbit a plane? Exactly. And then check this out. I cannot think of how GPS would work on a flat Earth. I love that. I cannot think how a GPS would work on a flat Earth. A lot of people are under the misconception that pretty much everything that they're doing with their cell phones is bouncing off of a satellite. Not true. Okay, here we go. Here's a video describing what this article is about. This is from Tech Insider.
Today, it's nearly impossible to believe the Earth is anything but round. But for most of our history, humans have thought the Earth was flat.
That's not true. The idea that flat Earth is archaic is not true. They put that out there in order to paint you up as somebody with a pre-scientific worldview instead of somebody who's actually embracing the scientific methodology.
The one concept our ancient ancestors were missing was gravity. Gravity's effects are the key to determining whether the Earth is actually flat or not. On a sphere, gravity pulls in the same direction everywhere on the surface. But on a disk, gravity changes direction as you move toward the edge. At the center, you feel a downward pull, just like on spherical Earth. But as you move out, gravity starts pulling sideways as well as downwards. This would wreak havoc on sports played in different parts of the world. A ball thrown straight up in the air midway out would curve down and backwards toward the disk's center. Plus, that ball wouldn't go nearly as high or far as a ball thrown up at the edge, where gravity's downward pull is practically zero. But sports are just the beginning. Since plant stems grow opposite to the direction of gravity, an effect called negative gravitropism, you'll see forests grow at an increasingly sharp angle the farther you are from the center. Continue toward the edge and you'll feel like you're climbing a hill that's growing steeper with each step as the backward pull of gravity takes over. At Earth's end, that hill will feel like a 90-degree cliff pulling you straight back to the center. But if you could make it over the edge and stand on the thin outer part of the disk, you will feel a downward pull just like on spherical Earth. However, living here would be like living in a desert. Gravity's backwards effects pull on the oceans too, making it impossible for any water to reach the edge. Instead, sea levels will gradually rise as you travel in, making the world's center an aquatic metropolis. So, the next time you see an apple fall straight to the ground, be thankful the Earth is round. Because if it were flat, that apple might actually hit you in the face.
Okay, that is, what if the Earth were actually flat? And of course, that's hanging on to their model of the universe, their gravity. And by the way, there actually has been a flat planet discovered. It's a distant planet, and it is somewhat flat, disk-like planet. And I'm curious to know if what they just described is something they would posit to be true for that. Okay, this is something that came to me last night. Someone sent this to me. This is really good, actually. Astronaut says a neglected telescope is NASA's best chance of defending the Earth. And he says, we better fund it. This guy is a total doomsayer. For God's sake, we better fund it, because these asteroids are city killers. This is Rusty. Let me find his name here. Rusty Schweickart, retired NASA astronaut. Small asteroids can strike the Earth with enough force to destroy a city. And what they show you on this one is a cartoon. And the cartoon's actually kind of morbid. And it's about this individual. They make this cartoon character who they say is the first human to be killed by an asteroid, by a falling asteroid. And they create a cartoon to show you what it would look like if he's hit by one the size of a car versus hit by one the size of a house. And they work their way up until we see what would happen if we were hit by an asteroid the size of a city. And anyway, risk of death from above. And I've been saying for a while that this is just eschatology. I mean, look. Tell me this isn't just trying to scare people. NASA's neglected telescope is our best chance of defending the Earth from a city killer. And for God's sake, fund it. Which is another thing here. You have world saviors. So you're supposed to believe that these world saviors, NASA, Elon Musk, the private space agency, that they can actually, all the private companies, the space programs, they're actually positioning themselves to be heroes, saviors, planet saviors, saviors of humanity. If we give them enough money, we can stop this doomsday from coming. And of course, this guy just really is basing it on all these hypotheticals, which seem plausible because we've been indoctrinated for 100 years or so with stories of things falling from the sky. They put it in the TV shows. I saw this 60 Minutes episode where an astronaut was being interviewed, and he described how Mars was once like Earth, a lush paradise, and it was hit by a meteor, and that caused its atmosphere to dissipate and wreaked havoc on the environment, and now it's a dead planet. But the impact caused material from the surface of Mars to go into orbit around the sun, and through the mechanism of panspermia, this material, much of it organic, fell down to our planet and is the origin of life. So he was suggesting that the origin of Earth life is Martian. And then they cut to a commercial break to a show called Salvation, a 13-episode series about a meteor coming down to destroy the Earth and NASA pointing it out. So what we have here is this. The deadline for this legally mandated goal of tracking down all of the asteroids that are 460 feet and larger is 2020. So they're trying to find out by 2020 where all of the big rocks are, the ones that could actually destroy us. And it gives you some examples of how it could take out New York, Manhattan, Queens, Staten Island, the whole area. And it says we have the technology to confront the problem. And he says it's critical to discover, here we go, it's critical to discover where these larger rocks are to protect life on Earth. So again, they think they can protect you by what? So even if they do see it, and here's the proposed NEOCAM, asteroid hunting telescope. I mean, what's the asteroid hunting telescope going to do? And there's that movie with Bruce Willis. Where's the one where Bruce Willis kills himself, or he sacrifices himself to save the world? I think it was called Armageddon, where these astronauts jump aboard an asteroid and put a nuclear bomb on it. And of course, one guy has to stay behind to detonate it, so he sacrifices himself to save the world. Very Christ-like. Very, very Christ-like. They've been doing this for a bit. So they're calling these small, or these deadly rocks near Earth orbit, or near Earth objects, or NEOs. Small NEOs are not very bright, so you need a large telescope to pick them up. You can't see asteroids near the sun because you're blinded by the sky. Anyway, they go on how problematic it is to actually know where all the near-Earth asteroids are, and they do have a census. So we know how many, of what size, and where they are. But the NEOCAM needs to be put up there soon because we don't have any way to detect all these dangers from above without it. And it's going to cost some money. Here's an asteroid, a number of asteroids careening towards the Earth right here. Of course, this is an artist's illustration. This is not proof of a round Earth, but believers in it see this stuff. And they don't know. This is just wrath of God, and God is gravity. Gravity holds it all together. That's the God of the gaps that holds the system together. And so they're threatening you with a very archetypal fear. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. But I want to show you the cartoon. Oh, look at this. A simulation of a 66-foot wide asteroid burning up in the Earth's atmosphere. This is really bad. I'm sorry. It looks like Minecraft. A simulation. And JPL did hire a bunch of computer animation specialist for the Mars landing. It's like, oh, you want to be an astronaut? Well, I hope you're really good at Photoshop and 3D animation. Okay, now this is the video here. I mean, this to me is unconscionable. They could give this to kids to watch in schools, and I guess it's a cartoon, so it's okay, but it's pretty morbid. It says, watch how much damage an asteroid will do.
This is a tomato. You
Okay, this is Walter becoming the first human in recorded history to be killed by a meteorite. Most asteroids smaller than a car will burn up in the atmosphere and explode in an airburst. But here's one the size of a car. Shockwaves, breaks windows. A flash bright enough to cause a sunburn. Then we go into the house-sized one. Hiroshima, basically. 1.5 miles of buildings being flattened. An asteroid the size of a 20-story building would wipe out Paris, leaving a crater half a mile wide. Now, of course, this is all BS, but they're taught this in schools. One the size of a football field would obliterate New York. And here he is, Walter. This is his 5th death. They just keep having Walter get killed by meteorites. You'd feel it from 1,000 miles away. Now, I think the reason they're doing this also is they want to build the story in your mind so when they present it, it seems real. And what are they going to present? Some fireworks in the sky, a little pyrotechnics, some bombs on the ground, and a whole lot of crisis actors, a state of national emergency, the president offering his condolences via tweet, and like every other psyop, this becomes real. I mean, wait until they start psyoping meteorites on the regular. An asteroid more than half a mile would start to have global impacts. It would destroy Virginia. Dust clouds would block the sun and lead to climate change. See, okay, my issue with this one. If a meteorite can cause catastrophic climate change, if a meteorite can do these things any minute now, then why do we even bother trying to solve climate change? And the futility of it was brought up by that nihilist, the animatronic doomsayer Stephen Hawking, who's like, well, even if we do meet our climate change goals, we're probably going to be hit by a big rock anyway, which will cause climate change. So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. A meteorite the size of Everest would vaporize everything within 100 miles and kill life on the planet. This is about the same size. Okay, dinosaurs. When you're a kid, when you're in school, they make sure that you know all about aliens and dinosaurs. And of course, when you're a kid, you're also taught about everything else kind of in the same context. So you may be told about angels, or maybe you're in church and you see angels, but then you're also given as much time to discussing and seeing aliens. And then the same with dinosaurs. Dinosaur toys, it's on all your clothes, it's in all the cartoons. And why is that? Just so happens to be the case that both dinosaurs and aliens are part of your 21st century eschatology. Dinosaurs prove that all life can be wiped out because the big rock from the sky wiped them out. Extinction, mass extinction. Dinosaurs prove that. Their existence, or your belief in it, lets you to believe that, okay, well, everything could be wiped out by a big rock at any time. And they teach you that very first thing you learn. The Very first thing you learn. And then the aliens, of course, has to do with the futurism and revelations, judgment from above, and of course, where we're going next. And even the idea of an alien fits into the Darwinian thing where we were monkey, we became man, but if we keep going in the right direction and we keep advancing via technology, which is your savior in the New World Order religion, it's all about technology. Well, technology could advance us, transhuman, we could become the aliens. Type of stuff Joe Rogan likes to talk about. All the evolutionists see this, though, as progress. So man is somewhere between beast and angel, right? And that we're working our way up. Of course, angel now is alien, transhuman. And it's so infused in the sci-fi. And sci-fi was never for entertainment. Science fiction was always propaganda. But if you go to Netflix, there's a show called The Beyond about Earth 2, a better Earth, green. No capitalism, no industrial revolution, no climate change, no global warming. But you can't go there because your dirty carbon footprint. But if you're willing to sacrifice yourself, sacrifice your worldly nature and your flesh, in other words, what the big religion has always been teaching all along about original sin and shedding your sin, shedding your worldliness to go to heaven, you can go to Earth too, but you got to have your brain removed and stuck into a robot. And then you can go. Okay, so let's continue. This is the cartoon about Walter getting killed by asteroids or meteorites of every size. Here we go. A London size would be more than just extinction level. I think this is the one that destroys the world. It would slow the Earth's rotation. The largest known asteroid is the size of Texas. But it has no chance of hitting us. Okay, so about that one, the size of Texas. Big asteroid the size of Texas. If you were on it, would you see the curve? If you were standing on an asteroid the size of Texas, would you see curvature? If you're 6 feet tall, would the horizon curve? And we're saying it's a sphere the size of Texas. And my answer to that question is no, you wouldn't. We're too small. Like a gnat on the Goodyear blimp with a 3-inch range of vision. You're not going to see it. So when Buzz Aldrin recently said that he was walking around the moon and he was disoriented because the horizon kept curving and he wasn't used to that, that was a lie. That was a lie. I also want to point out something. We had something earlier, an article earlier about someone saying center of gravity on a flat Earth would be the center of a disk. You know, that's them not able to think outside of their little box. But I did want to point out that the very first solar eclipse was predicted, and it was predicted. The very first one recorded 585 BC, and of course this is your standard history if you want to believe it. The same people make arguments from ancient Greeks all the time. Oh, well, all the ancient Greeks knew it was flat, therefore it's flat. Well, I'm sorry, appeals to ancient Greeks isn't a good argument, but let's say you accept it, and they all knew. Well, it's not true. Ancient Greek Thales, very first scientist, first chemist, first astrologer, first philosopher, first person to predict a solar eclipse, did so on a flat model. He believed that the world as we experience it is a flat, and he didn't have a border, he didn't have an edge, just flat, endless pool of water with our land floating on it and everything else above. And that's just, Thales, worth mentioning because the argument from ancient Greeks is not a good argument. Now about things falling from the sky, again, it's predictive programming. So here's the thing. If they didn't give you the predictive programming, you wouldn't buy into the story. 9/11 was effective because we had been conditioned to believe in this omnipresent terrorist threat. We've been taught about this. They gave us the stereotype, they give you the stories, and then they have a few smaller events to talk about it. They spread the conspiracies among the right, and then they manifest it, and it fits the model that they gave you. Talking about models, really quick here. replace the word model with worldview. So the mainstream media has a worldview. If you believe everything in it, all the fake news, all the fake science, you have a very specific model of your existence, of our reality, irrespective of shape. Because you could figure out the earth was flat and stationary, but if you still believe all of the fake news and the sci-war, well, then you're still in their model. So leaving the globe model is more than just geography. It means you also have to recognize the world religions for what they are. Total and complete worldviews. And the spinning ball model is the present worldview shared by the most most number of people, but it's also the uh, official world religion. It's the universal. Universal, or in Latin you'd say Catholic. Your space religion, your outer space religion, is the new universal religion. Space is heaven. And it's universal because no matter where you are, Jew, on the religious spectrum, Jew, Christian, Catholic, or atheist, you're still adhering to this worldview, this model, this concept. And it's held up by what? The mainstream media. And the alternative media, which is mainstream because it's bouncing off the same green screens and teleprompters. And this is why I think it's important to point out the fact that if you're someone who sees through all the fake shootings and fake terror attacks, but you still think the space station is real, well, then you're still 1 foot in the matrix. It's pretty much that simple. But by the same token, if you know that the space station is fake and outer space is fake, and you know the Earth is probably flat and stationary, but you still believe the mainstream media when they report on all these fake events, these shootings, etc., then guess what? You're still 1 foot in the matrix. You're no better than those who think that the space station is real in terms of your proximity to reality. You're still halfway in the matrix. And we established this last year. That's why we had that litmus test. We said, hey, look, if you're not able to denounce Parkland, David Hogg and all that, and Starman, the Tesla Roadster floating into space, in the same breath, then you have not exited that matrix. You're still in it. You're still in their propaganda matrix. You're still in that worldview. And those of us who are deconstructing the false worldview don't stop at geography. Disproving the formula 8 inches per mile squared is not enough to break the matrix. That's why we have set up this. Go to antimedia.network. We've moved on to becoming a real-time, well, it's two things. One, it's a catalog of things that have happened before, but also it's a place for us to real-time deconstruct media lies as they are being promulgated. We're covering school shootings, airport shootings, and these are all the hoaxes. Hoaxes at schools, airports, public transit, concerts, malls, nightclubs, hospitals, restaurants, vehicle attacks, sporting events, universities, churches, police shooting hoaxes, workplace shooting hoaxes, political shooting hoaxes, postal shootings. Then we're covering crisis actors, disinformation agents, fake climate change, fake space program, celebrity hoaxes, props and cliches, celebrity involvement in the psyops. And then, of course, historical, and then reverse engineering our fake history. Because here's what's happening. Flat Earth to me isn't just about your fake geography. It's about fake history. Every day, your fake history is being aggregated. Every day, your mainstream media is promulgating the stories describing the world view of the day. And it becomes cataloged and it aggregates. And this accretion is something we call history. Well, knowing how much of what is being published in the mainstream media is demonstrably false, hoaxed, faked, well then, what are we going to do? Sit by, knowing all this and allow them to create a fake history and a fake worldview all around us? Like, even if you know that the world doesn't curve 8 inches per mile squared, you're not really a truther, or you're not really fighting for the truth or working towards it if you're not real time putting a brakes on their fake history. Calling out the Psy-War. And what is the Psy-War? Pseudo-news events presented as real. Terror agitprop, courtesy of your state-controlled media. So if you're new to this, to exposing psyops, propaganda analysis, radical skepticism, if you're new to it, go to antimedia.network and just start reading and investigating these things. We even put up an auto-hoaxer lexicon, which is something we've been developing here in the Discord server. So we're going to have a lexicon and explanation, citations, evidence for everything. This antimedia.network website is a wiki which I believe will be a massive thorn in the side of the MSM. And we really do need to make a point, I think, to call out people on their reflexive belief of mainstream media events and pseudo events. Like, if you're going to say it's true until proven false, you're on the wrong side of the fence here. Really, we have seen enough hoaxery to no longer give the pathological liars the benefit of the doubt. We understand their methodology. Don't feel bad about it. If you know all the SpaceX launches are fake, if you know the NASA launches are fake, you don't sit around wondering, is the next one going to go to the moon? You know it's fake. You are an auto hoaxer if you know the space station is fake, that the rocket launches are fake. So there's no reason for you to give the benefit of the doubt to the same media organizations that are presenting you with the fake launches. It's not like the media is a bunch of dumb shits walking around being tricked. Oh, we got fooled again by NASA because they're so clever. No, they are integrated. They're part of the system. And this radical skepticism needs to apply to all worldviews that we are being expected or told to accept. Also, one more thing before we end here. I want to talk about the edge really quick. Where's the edge? You need to start asking people. We should ask people who are asserting that there is an edge where it is. I haven't asserted an edge. I don't know of one. So, I don't go around saying that there is one. But there are people who do say that there is one. They don't say it in those words, but they are asserting it by their other assertions. So, for example, if you're going to say that we are in an enclosed system, then it logically follows that there is an edge. So, you're going to assert an enclosed system? Tell me where the edge is, because the edge is going to be where your enclosure meets the ground. And it's kind of a cop-out to say, well, ice wall. But if you're going to say it, because then I want to ask what's next. And that's what I want to find out. I want to find out where is the edge in your mind. That way I can determine, based on where that edge in your mind is, what you think of what's beyond that edge. Again, we at the Infinite Plane Society do not assert an edge. We don't have enough information. The Flat Earth Society has an edge. But you ask them, where is it? And they always laugh at you. Why are they laughing? It's a valid question. Of all the questions that the globe believers ask of you, the one valid question is, where's the edge? And none of you have an answer. I don't have an answer. So why are we dodging the question? So we need to stop dodging it. Stop dodging it. Anyone pushes the dome, pushes an enclosed system, anyone pushing rectangular, looping, Pac-Man Earth, what have you, they are dodging the question mark. And for that very reason, we have introduced maps of the known flat Earth. And this is a collection of maps which do not presuppose an edge where all the other maps have established an edge. What the globe has done is they have just wrapped up the map into a ball so there is no edge. But maps of the known flat Earth, because the implication here is that there is an unknown flat Earth. Terra incognita. So if you go to infiniteplanesociety.com, you can see our collection of these maps of the known flat Earth. And in my opinion, these are the only maps we should be using. If somebody says, where's your model? What's your map? It's like, well, this is the best we can do. Sorry, it's got a bunch of question marks on it, but we do have a whole lot of questions. All right, thanks for joining me. I'll see you all later. This is Dome Exit by MVP. We should be codependently running from the globe to the dome, Instead, you should be understanding how they got you in the first place so you can't be captured again.
The danger zone. We quick to put a bullet in the stranger's dome.